Caroline Cranshaw was just 15 when the massive 1989 earthquake struck San Francisco. For many years afterwards, she suffered extreme anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder. It wasn't until she found hypnotherapy that she was able to deal with the lasting memories from her traumatic experience. Well, Caroline joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
The events in Christchurch, because you've been living in New Zealand for many years now.
11 years.
Sort of made you feel uneasy again, or brought back those memories?
Yeah, it has a bit. Yeah, definitely. It's a pretty traumatic thing to experience and go through, and yeah.
What are your memories of that day?
Well, I remember I was staying with a family friend, and we had just sat down to watch the Baseball World Series, and as we turned on the TV, it actually started, and just this massive rumble. We just ran for the doorways, is what I really remember, and hung on for dear life. And then kind of realizing what had happened. There wasn't too much damage to that home, but walking around outside, and as you got further down towards the marina area, it was pretty horrific. And the poor people, what they experienced, what they went through was, yeah, that was the traumatic part for me, really.
You know, a lot of deaths, obviously, from that earthquake. Unlike, you know, we've been very fortunate in Christchurch.
Very lucky.
And what we've been hearing too is that with the, you know, the aftershocks, which are still continuing, and at a, you know, not a small magnitude either, is really traumatising. And you really suffered from that.
I did, and you know, for many years it was like you'd hear a train or a truck, and I can remember seeing other people in San Francisco walking around, and like a rumble would start with a big truck, and people would kind of freeze, and that nervousness really never leaves you. And I went to many different therapists to try to kind of deal with that anxiety I had, and it wasn't until I went to a hypnotherapist that it was like one session. And it shifted for me. It was so amazing that I actually became a hypnotherapist.
Wow. So what exactly did you, I mean, I think for a lot of us who've never experienced it, we imagine this sort of swinging timepiece or something.
No, that's, those days are kind of over now, except for entertainment. For me, I mean, we had a chat and just did a relaxation. And the way your unconscious mind works is that it records all of your experiences. And its job is to protect you. So if anything reminds it of that experience, it will like trigger.
It triggers it.
It triggers it, and it will play those memories, not necessarily consciously, but you'll go into that same state that you were in. So people, whenever they're triggered, especially with these aftershocks that are happening, they'll just have that same state be triggered over and over, which is, they're just re-experiencing that trauma.
So how often on any given day or week did something happen that made you think, that causes you considerable stress?
I became fearful about other things as well, because it's like the one thing you can count on normally is that the ground will stay still. So when that kind of security is taken away, you start to wonder what else can happen.
You question everything else.
Yeah, you do. So
have you dealt with other people? I mean, so post-traumatic stress is what you were suffering from,
yes,
which basically the hypnotherapy cured you of?
Yeah, it did. It did.
And you deal with other people now suffering from PTS?
I do. I deal with anxiety, depression, all different sorts of issues. And it's just a highly effective way of helping to shift it, because we don't really hold that anxiety consciously. You know, it's triggered by something a bit deeper.
You've got some great advice too for people who, are suffering, and maybe not to the degree of post-traumatic stress, but just finding it very difficult given the continued aftershock, about ways that they can deal with anxiety and trauma.
I've got some really good tips that you can do at home right now. Obviously, it's kind of hard to do hypnotherapy on yourself at home. So a really effective tip, number one, is to think about keeping your mouth moist, keeping saliva in your mouth. And that may sound a bit bizarre, but one of the first things that happens when you get nervous or anxious is your mouth goes dry. And this starts off a whole chain of physiological events. Your heart starts to race, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid, your body pumps out a bunch of stress hormones. And by keeping your mouth moist and thinking about your breathing being even, this tells your body and your mind that
it's just sending the right signals.
Keeps it from flipping that switch into fight or flight. So another really good tip is thinking about your posture and your expression. I mean, this is going to sound very American, but you know, times when you're just going to need to get on with things. And if you want to shift your mood very quickly, it's, you know, sitting up straight, thinking about how you hold yourself when you feel really good. and smiling. And maybe not do this out in public, but doing a really big, cheesy smile and really holding it. And do that for as long as you can. And this actually tells your brain, it says, oh, we're smiling, we must feel good. So it cools and calms your brain down, and it sends, you start producing endorphins. Endorphins are hugely powerful,
Caroline,
calming.
Thank you so much. Some good advice there. And as you said, simple things people can do. Caroline Cranshaw, thank you.
Yeah.
We've all got moist mouths now. I can imagine the entire country moistening their mouth.
But it's funny, isn't it? You think your brain triggers everything else, but I guess other things can trigger your brain as well, so it works both ways.
Yeah, I can imagine that would work. I feel better having moistened my mouth. Have a drink.